All right, well, let's get started. Good afternoon and welcome to our Tuesday Universal Peace Federation webinar series. And today's program is hosted by the International Association for Peace and Economic Development. And I'll be your host today. We're one of the eight associations under the umbrella. My name's Alan Jessen. So for the sake of our new guests, I'd like to introduce or say a bit about UPF. It was founded in 2005 by the late Reverend Sung Myung Moon and his wife, Dr. Ha Cha-han Moon. And UPF is a 501c3 NGO with general consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council. So we're an international and interreligious network of individuals and organizations, including representatives from religion, government, civil society, and the private sector, dedicated to achieving world peace on the foundation of mutual prosperity, interdependence, and universally shared values. We have a lot of ground to cover today, and we got a late start, so I'll keep it short and get to the program. We are being live streamed, and this is recorded. You can find us at us.upf.org. If you have questions at the end of our presentation, you can put them in the chat. We have two speakers, and today's program falls under the series Business and Economic Thought Leaders. Title of this presentation is Universal Rewards Solutions, Igniting Economic Growth, Shared Prosperity, and Human Solidarity. Before I introduce our main speaker, Joel Holdreth, I'd like to set the context for this meeting by reading a paragraph of an article that Joel wrote for a 2023 book on financial literacy. And his chapter was entitled Financial Literacy Plus New Purchasing Power, How Ledger Economics Can End Poverty and Promote Continuous Economic Improvement. And here's the paragraph I'd like to read. It says, traditional competitive money-centered economics and commerce rests upon the now outdated notion of scarcity, pitting people, communities, and nations against one another in a battle for money and domination. A significant challenge to solving our economic problems is a current left versus right polarization and stalemate. This status quo prevents us from working together on needed solutions and keeps us from seeing the inherited but now outdated roots of our social, economic, and environmental challenges. Ledger economics can counter that polarization by uniting companies, communities, universities, political organizations, and government agencies in a common strategy for progress. Amen to that. We hope that your solution can get traction, Joel. So let me introduce Joel. Joel Holdreth has been an inventor, social entrepreneur, and environmentalist for over 40 years, launching Solar Consultants, Inc. in 1983, Dual Currency Systems, 1997, and co-founding Responsible Minnesota Business in 1998. He was a Minnesota Finance and Commerce Innovator of the Year in 2005, and a Visa Thought Leader Innovation Provocateur, that's a good word, in 2007. His new company, Universal Reward Solutions, intends to be a 30-year overnight success story by launching community loyalty rewards through the statewide Empowering Small Minnesota Cities program. In 1993, Joel founded Commonweal, Inc. and was awarded the first U.S. patents for a dual currency pricing, accounting, and transaction settlement system. His pioneering work in dual currency commerce is published in The Future of Money, New Alchemists, and two chapters co-authored with the Minnesota professor Thomas Fisher, which I referenced above. Joel has presented dual currency solutions to senior executives at Visa, U.S. Bank, Wells Fargo, PayPal, United Airlines, Thrivent Financial, and elsewhere. And Joel, the floor is yours. Share with us your vision and what this is all about. Thank
you. Thank you, folks, and thanks to those attending. Let me get the slideshow rolling. Community loyalty rewards. People know that loyalty rewards are backed by excess business capacity, frequent flyer miles backed by empty airline seats, Starbucks points backed by coffee, Hilton honors backed by empty motel rooms. But if all the rewards are for consumer spending, whoever has the most money now also gets the most new purchasing power. So we've devised community loyalty rewards, and you'll hear what that's all about. I trust that you've read the fairly famous Buckminster Fuller quote, we think we can all rise together, and you'll hear what we call continuous economic improvement. Here's a quick way of understanding this model. All of economic history is about new technologies, creating new forms of commerce to raise people up more quickly, and it's all happening at an accelerating pace. The whole agricultural era, run by barter and gold coins, lasted 3,000 to 5,000 years. Gold coins made possible by smelting and metal casting. So along comes printing, which made paper currency and checks possible, and ran the industrial era for 300 to 500 years. And finally, computers and the internet made credit cards, e-commerce possible, and that's fully mature in 30 to 50 years. So it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to understand that if we come up with the next paradigm of money based on better technologies today, it can be upon us very quickly. I don't like to read slides to people. I'll give you a moment to see what we're going to cover. All right, so at the heart of our work is that we're drowning in wealth, yet searching for money, our own invention to distribute it. Going to grocery stores that are full of very desirable groceries, and they all want more customers, and grocery aisles are empty at least as often as they're full. College desks are empty more than they're full. Restaurants, movie theaters, shopping malls, auto dealerships. We're literally drowning in wealth. Business wants more customers. People want the goods and services. And what's missing? Money, our own invention. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we call for continuous economic improvement. What does that mean? Technology only improves. Human skill, knowledge, and creativity only improve. Global economic infrastructure only improve. Our ability to use free and abundant renewable resources literally only improves every day. So we should be seeing an ever higher quality of life, ever shorter working hours, and ever less damage to the environment. Instead, we see the rise and fall of individuals, families, and communities, depending on how the economy's doing, or the plight, or the status of an individual industry or an individual employer. So what's different about our model? We operate from a ledger, not exchange tokens. Think about this. Ledgers don't crash. Ledgers don't have inflation and recession. You can't hoard ledger entries. You can't be short on ledger entries. You can't speculate in ledger entries. So a ledger system, which I first learned about in Walden 2 by B.F. Skinner, I looked across the pictures. We all look old enough to have read Skinner's novel. So a ledger system is very different than a competitive token system. And to show how this works, loyalty rewards don't circulate like traditional currencies. They're issued, redeemed, and taken off the books. That's a ledger system that has incredible potential to match all of this underutilized business capacity with unmet needs here and around the world. Now, most people don't follow this aspect of business and economics. All businesses would love to sell full retail. Well, they sell as much as they can. Then they put things on sale. And they take some of the excess capacity that's left and they barter it for things that they need. A printing company and a restaurant will barter menus for meals. Then almost every business offers some of its excess capacity to its own employees. You work at the airlines, free or discount flights. You work at a university, free or discount tuition. Then it's used to back loyalty rewards, as I've mentioned. And then finally, it's donated for tax deductions as in-kind donations to communities. There's lots of mobilize excess capacity, cover the moving parts of our system very quickly. We've invented business community wealth ledger to measure the excess capacity and to monetize it. There's a role for merchants. Something's just said my internet connection's unstable, so I hope it's all working for you. Sponsors is an infrastructure that already exists. Community organizations sponsor their volunteers. Schools sponsor their students. We don't have to invent an infrastructure like was often invented for the industrial economy or the high-tech economy. Users are a common constituency for apps. And then the financial services industry is massive and everywhere, as are loyalty rewards. Loyalty rewards are now used all over the world, but financial services provides the cash source for what we call dual currency commerce. Enough cash in the deal to work in the current system, enough new money in the deal to build a bridge to solve social, economic, and environmental problems. And then if there's time, I'll talk a little bit about the Visa story, where every bank had their own competing credit card and they were an industry association that set their own rules. It didn't take government control or government regulation. The industry created a ledger system that never crashes, and it operates by protocol. If you're a merchant, you can do this, you can't do that. A cardholder, you can do this, you can't do that. And finally, a bank, you can do this and you can't do that. And the founder, D. Hawk, wanted all three of those stakeholder groups to be equal members in the co-op, but Bank of America, leading on behalf of the bank, said, "Are you crazy? We're going to own this thing and they're going to be our customers." But in our model, everybody's stakeholders in the new community loyalty rewards program. So the cornerstone is the business community wealth ledger. We fill it with all the types of excess capacity you see, and everything digital is infinite, but there's plenty of empty restaurant tables, empty college desks, empty grocery aisles, as I mentioned. And the dual currency contract with merchants tells us in ratio to the number of participating sponsors, which I'll describe in a second, and users, how much wealth is available to distribute as community loyalty rewards. So schools sponsor their students, employers sponsor their employees, environmental groups sponsor people working on the environment, the government sponsors seniors so we can increase their social security benefits or those on public relief of one form or another. So this enormous amount of pooled excess capacity solves social, economic, and environmental problems without needing new government funding. So how does this work? Imagine, let's see if, all right. Imagine a $20 restaurant meal where 12 cash and 8 community loyalty rewards represents a win for everybody. The restaurant, it's like 2-for-1 dining or senior discounts. And it's very important to understand that merchants get to apply not only the discount that works for them, but the restrictions. 2-for-1 dining, no Friday or Saturday night, senior discounts before 5:30 and after 7. So we're stretching purchasing power in dollars by adding community loyalty rewards to the dollar portion of the transaction. Now imagine off hours at the YWCA. So restaurants are usually for-profit. YWCA is a nonprofit. A $20 YWCA pass could be 6 cash and 14 community loyalty rewards. Why does that work? Because the marginal cost of production for the fitness club is just a hot shower and a towel. The restaurant had the food in the deal, making it more expensive. So ratios and restrictions are what are the foundational pricing mechanism in our system. Typical earning and spending accounting, we're not making a giant break with how money economics and commerce work. We're just making up for the fact that we have plenty of excess capacity side by side with plenty of unmet need, and we monetize excess capacity to raise more people up. Think about this and think about the pace. About 20 years ago, the sharing economy took the tiniest amount of excess capacity, an empty room in someone's home or an idle car and driver, and scaled it to millions of jobs and billions of dollars of new wealth on the table. But filtered through win-lose competition over money, which is the unfortunate dark side of free enterprise capitalism, hotels, motels, and their employees took the hit from Airbnb. Cab drivers, limo drivers, and their companies took the hit from Uber and Lyft. Why don't we have continuous economic improvement across the board? Outdated economics that's money-centered rather than people and planet-centered. Very quick walk through a transaction. So program sponsors, community organizations, businesses, government agencies reward volunteerism, youth academic performance, etc. Our company, Universal Reward Solutions, has the contracts with merchants and the contracts with sponsors so that we know how much wealth is available to stretch people's dollars. So community members or employees sign up online to participate. And, you know, I just want to pause and say, after a sip of water, if I was describing the internet before it was built, there'd be some challenges in understanding it. So we are looking for early adopters, people who can think outside the box. And I really want to explain that because early adopters and minimum viable product are the way that innovation gets to market these days. So the early adopters, when the Department of Defense and the campuses built the internet, were students and techies. And they looked at the telecommunications of emails and they said, well, what else could we do? Can we do bulletin boards? Can we do chat rooms? Can we do websites? And pretty soon the entire thing exploded into many, many, many more products than just exchanging information securely, which was what the Department of Defense, the National Science Foundations, and the campuses were working on. So individuals sign up through their sponsors. They make purchases online or at retail locations. By the way, I don't want to suggest that we're not early stage. We're very early stage on this, but I've been working on it, as mentioned, for 3 decades, various teams, various near misses. Finally, all the technology is here to scale this at the pace of the sharing economy or the e-commerce boom and bust. So dual currency transactions settle like any other transactions. We've carved out 5% for operating costs and 3% for a percent goes to the sponsors, like affinity donations, like the Sierra Club Visa, keeps the system running and covers transaction fees. All right. Yeah, pretty fast. Why is this beyond left versus right? I think a lot of us are in a lot of pain over the fact that our country's at war over how do we solve our social, economic, and environmental problems. And we don't have to be. In fact, one historic example, at the end of the Depression, it looked just like today. Labor and management were at each other's throats. Politicians were fighting left and right. There was still plenty of poverty and hopelessness. In 2 years, with none of today's technology, 75 years ago, we went from ended the Depression to full war production. Now, the myth is that that happened because of government spending on the war, but we've had massive government spending and massive war since then. And we haven't solved a single social, economic, or environmental problem. In fact, 6 giant economic sectors haven't solved it. The private sector couldn't do it, as we saw with the Great Depression. So we added the public sector. Together, they couldn't do it. We added the nonprofit sector. They all haven't done it. We've always had the cooperative sector. And more recently, based on high tech, we've added social impact investing and the sharing economy. And I'm not even counting cryptocurrency, which is a whole separate conversation, but crypto is a poker chip. You buy it for cash, hoping to cash out a whole bunch more. All right. So for conservatives, business-led, market-based, profit-driven, completely voluntary and not government-regulated, completely self-funding. We don't need a penny of higher taxes, deeper debt, or redistribution of wealth schemes. And just like the internet, there's mass customization. Once you follow the protocol of the internet, you can do e-commerce, you can do charity, you can do porn, you can be for against guns, for against abortion. So everything a conservative or a libertarian dreams of. Well, if it's all that, what could it possibly be for the left? Immediate, not trickle down, diverse, inclusive, and equitable. We're piling new resources on, and we're piling them across the board so that immediately there's a chance for people who face generations of discrimination to start catching up. Efficiency promotes degrowth, so we're ever more sustainable in this whole project and socially responsible. All right, so our minimum viable product is starting in Minnesota with the Empowering Small Minnesota Communities. We've got the Minnesota Design Center led by Tom Fisher, whose chapters I've co-authored. He's a global leader in human-centered design. And we said, well, we've got money-centered economics. What if we had people and planet-centered economics? So we've got the University of Minnesota Crookston campus, a think tank on the campus, the economic development folks in Crookston, and the senior volunteer program of AmeriCorps, all in this little corner of a $9 billion Minnesota region. All right. So all the stakeholders win. I got 2 slides left. Youth see a better future. Merchants profit from increased sales. Families and communities prosper from newfound wealth. Disparities close from win-win cooperation. Leaders, leaders on both sides of the aisle gain effective tools to address historic challenges. Just what I said, beyond left versus right. I participate in Braver Angels and Braver Network, trying to get the whole country unstuck from left versus right. And workplaces become more cooperative centers of innovation, learning, and contribution. This is a tool to help the early adopter workplaces to attract the best and the brightest. How fast can we have innovation? Well, I gave you the example of World War II 75 years ago with none of today's technology, but think about this. The 3,000-year-old paradigm, humans will never fly, ended in 8 seconds and 120 feet at Kitty Hawk. That's pretty fast paradigm shift. And I love this saying. I used to say, ask forgiveness, not permission, but there's a new slogan, proceed until apprehended. So I'll leave this up for a second, but shrink it. And I think you guys are going to take over, right?
Okay, yes, Joel. Thank you for that. I know you, have to move a little quicker than maybe you'd like, but you did a great job. So, I guess my thoughts are that we want to understand the concept that this is, we all can see empty capacity around. I think that's true. Even especially with COVID, a lot of things changed. People started working from home. We have empty buildings. and you kind of wonder, we're not going to be doing a lot of new buildings if you have a lot of empty space. So it's just kind of resonates, I think, with us that if there's a way to do the matching of the overcapacity, overbuilding with needs. So that's fascinating for me. I'm going to bring up Dr. Anderson here, and he's got some thoughts on it. By the way, Joel and Dr. Anderson, Gordon Anderson, are both from Minneapolis, so they were able to meet and have a little conversation in preparation for this. So I'd like to bring up Gordon Anderson, and let me go ahead and introduce Dr. Anderson to our conversation today. So Gordon Anderson is Gordon L. Anderson is a PhD and author of Integral Society, Social Institutions and Individual Sovereignty. And he's president of the Paragon House Publishers. Gordon Anderson is a PhD in Philosophy of Religion with a minor in Peace Studies from Claremont Graduate University. As a Secretary General of Professors World Peace Academy, he organized comprehensive academic conferences on world social systems with the late Professor Morton A. Kaplan at the University of Chicago. His integral philosophy developed as the editor of a series of books by integral scholars at Paragon House and as an adjunct professor at the California Institute of Studies. So, Gordon, I know your thoughts about this. You have a few slides you want to share, so please go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Alan. I'll pull up my slide. Just 5 slides here. Okay, I think everybody sees that. And I have met Joel and talked through a few questions. And these are just my opinions and comments on what he has presented. I see many positive aspects of this reward system. It leads to wealth distribution rather than concentration. And it's not redistribution, but it's a natural distribution system. I see it as a headwing approach. It transcends left and right wing, and it fits with the unification goals of co-prosperity and common cause. Reward dollars are based on economic production, not spending. I do think that that's where we need to focus in the economic system, is that money itself should be based more on production and wealth than the fake money we have today. It mobilizes hidden wealth, avoids waste, pollution, and unsustainability. Everything is voluntary. Rewards platform algorithm provides a level playing field, and the algorithm remains a referee, not a player. That's important because players often hijack systems. Continuous economic development without periods of recession can help. This can help as a buffer. It won't affect the general economy's development or recessions, but I see it as providing a buffer like the Civilian Conservation Corps did in the New Deal. And it can reduce poverty and government spending on welfare. The difference between wealth and money is something that Joel emphasized to me. Wealth is an asset, like your home, car, health, or environment. Not just physical assets, but your health and environment are assets as well. But money is a medium of exchange, and it comes in many different forms. Gold is money with an intrinsic value. Money backed by assets, paper notes, electronic currency can be backed by gold or not backed by gold. And money is anonymous or linked to social credit. Anonymous money anyone can spend. If you link to social credit, you have to identify players, and you can withhold or provide money to those players. So one important thing is that I would think we need to have anonymous. It needs to be anonymous if it's like true money behind the entire economic system, but this is a dual system, and I think it can work with the other system that we have. It's backed by the assets and commodities and services that the sponsors and merchants have. It's not anonymous money, but it is linked to some type of social credit system. And the positive things, we have successful results already have occurred with other reward models like Visa. So there's examples there. Motivation existed for participation in the Works Progress Administration and Civilian Conservation Corps. People already involved in volunteer work would receive additional motivation with rewards. Merchants already provide incentives and discounts on products and oversupply. Smartphone apps, rather than a plastic card, can make this system widely available and continually updated on the central ledger. It's all voluntary, it doesn't harm anyone, it's a win-win model. Some negatives, I think I don't know if it's a problem or not, but the line between volunteerism and employment is going to become blurred. People who would volunteer and receive nothing are now going to receive something. So there's a sense that it's employment. Secondly, the federal government depends on income tax. The Visa reward model is based on sales, so it's not the same kind of threat to the government. The government will be tempted to consider these reward dollars as taxable income, like it does with tips, which are already reward dollars and anonymous. Tips are usually given with anonymous money. This ledger-based reward system is not anonymous and thus contains potential privacy and political targeting risks like the Canadian truckers. If somebody gets in and tells the owner of the system that they have to withhold rewards from certain people. People currently on welfare handouts would be less motivated to serve than when the CCC and the which was a work for welfare program existed, and there were not welfare handouts at the same time. And it doesn't solve any fundamental problems with the existing corrupted banking system, which I discuss in Integral Society, although it can mitigate disasters a bit. Conclusion, this dual currency rewards program looks like a win-win program for all participants. It would be nice to see it take off like PayPal did. Capital investment is required to initiate this program, especially in the development of the Ledger database and smartphone app. So Joel is going to need to raise more money, I think, to get it off the ground. And the platform, I think, should be a nonprofit organization or a cooperative to remain neutral. In 2008, Visa became publicly traded with large ownership by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street Capital, and it is now under investigation for exorbitant rates. I don't think we want ownership of something like this ever to end up in the hands of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street Capital. We need to see successful implementation in a way to reassure governments that social benefits will exceed potential tax loss. I think that's going to be a challenge. Joel is going to have to, really reassure governments that in the end, this program is definitely going to be more helpful to society than any potential tax loss. And I'd like to thank Joel for bringing this rewards program to our attention and encourage its support for promotion of economic democracy. So that is my comments. I'm very pleased. I initially had some skeptical ideas when I talked to Joel and we talked through them, and he convinced almost every concern that I had that he's already thought of the potential downsides I had thought of, and he came up with answers to every one of them. Thank you.
Very, very good. Thanks, Gordon, for putting some of those thoughts in an organized way. Joel, do you have anyone you want to respond to anything that
I can
Gordon
make
brought
a
up?
few quick comments and then
Yeah.
you can open it up for more discussion. You need to send me your deck, Gordon. That was the best summary of our work that anybody's ever put together after a couple of short conversations. People have to understand, if we were trying to describe democracy under kings and queens, it'd just be so confusing, right? What's a legislature? What's a balance of powers? What's elections, and on and on. So there was a gigantic debate in American history over backing money with gold or silver. And, what's the value of gold or silver? You can't eat it. You can't build a house out of it. It's good for jewelry, but it's not good for running an economy. That's just a joke. That's people's confusion over money and wealth. Because again, the most important thing about our work, we're drowning in wealth that our money is not distributing. And we need a level of cooperation that takes us somewhere new. So just a couple of the points. But again, huge gratitude to Gordon and Alan. And they can test. I've never seen two people come up to speed as quickly as this. They read a few of our deeper white papers. We did some questions back and forth. I hope to interact with your network more because it was pure inspiration. Volunteerism. Think about volunteerism and women's unpaid work at home. We have a lot of work that people do that we'd have a lot less poverty if they got paid for. We've got paid fire departments and volunteer fire departments, and they both put out the fires. When communities don't have much money, they rely on volunteers. When there's plenty of money, you can have rapid and sustainable and scalable economic development. So I don't like to counterpose volunteerism to paid work. We have paid delivery and Meals on Wheels delivery. And it's all just, people will do one of two things. They'll give away their loyalty rewards because they earned them for volunteering and they don't need them, or they'll use them to raise the family's standard of living and quality of life. But we're just building a bridge to a day where there isn't any poverty at all. And some people would call that idealistic. Others would call it very practical when we're wasting more wealth than we're distributing. Mary Helen, I love all your nods. They're very encouraging. Taxation is always an interesting question when there's a new money on the scene. And I think, Gordon, you did try to make it clear that when we're monetizing massive amounts of wealth and we're solving problems like poverty or like the lack of health care or global relationships that are often based on money worries and if people don't want so many refugees coming into our country, let's build up their country so it's a prosperous and democratic place to live. Of course, all these things are longer discussions, but how the taxation issue works, we wanted to apply for a private letter ruling that would say what will happen when the money rolls out, but the government doesn't give them anymore. So they'll actually be trying to sort it out for themselves. Took them a long time to figure out what to do about cryptocurrency. And welfare is also interesting. We got a ruling one time. We've tried some pilots, but we weren't able to scale them. But in the 90s, when we had a pilot, we had some of the biggest players in Minnesota, Hennepin County, the Mall of America, the Minneapolis public school system. And the we were offering community service dollars to youth who could then redeem them at the mall. But I had a fight with my then partners, CEO and chief technical officer, because the system wasn't going to work. A young person had to spend $2,000 to build up $100 of rebates. So it was based on cash rebates and not the new money being actually viable or fungible. But we did get the state of Minnesota to pass a ruling saying they're not, if people on welfare earn these, it wouldn't cut into their welfare checks. So we could actually raise the benefits of people on welfare without it harming them. Why don't we see what other questions people have?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. We have
Oh,
a
and
couple
by
of
the way, I can be found on LinkedIn. Just there's my name. Reach out on LinkedIn. We'll link, and then I'll share more information.
Okay.
Alan.
And I did put in the link, Joel, to that article you wrote on financial literacy that I referenced. We have two folks here from the Center for Economic and Social Justice. And of course, we met you at the Braver Angels conference, Joel, so that was good. So this is maybe a little different discussion between ownership and purchasing power, because the community rewards obviously is adding purchasing power that's asset backed, because it's from the wealth that's already been produced, right? But Dawn Brohan would like to ask this question. She says, under the community loyalty rewards system, one, what is the source of financing for new capital formation, for example, in the form of advanced technologies that will be producing future goods and services? Two, how would the system enable non-owning consumers to become owners of the new capital, which would produce capital incomes with which they could purchase goods and services, thus eliminating excess capacity and excess production? Is that a...
Okay, so what's not very well understood in general, by being massively overbuilt to meet all need in the US and across the globe, food's an abundant renewable resource. Global agribusiness has global reach. We could be delivering food everywhere in the world overnight. It pours into the United States, shrimp and oysters and on, every night of the week. Not only can we deliver existing food to every corner of the globe, but we can set up permaculture greenhouses in every corner of the globe, and people can grow their own food. We can put permaculture greenhouses, and for people who don't understand permaculture, it's organic, not harsh to the planet. We can have permaculture greenhouses on flat roofs everywhere. So it's not about growth. That's a false notion of economics. It's about monetizing wasted wealth and degrowth. The cities are massively overbuilt. We have tons of empty buildings side by side with lots of homelessness all across the country since COVID. So we're a B2C project, and what I heard was sort of a B2B in general technology development model, or where will new technology come from? As the new currency matures, it can actually be dedicated to every kind of economic development project. I actually think chasing ownership, I'm going to give the internet as a very important precedent and a very important model. The internet lives in the commons. It's owned by nobody. It's operated by protocol, which means rules. If you don't follow the protocol, you can't even get on. The minute you follow the protocol, you can be in favor of spending your time on e-commerce, on charity, on porn, anything you want. You can be for against guns, for against abortion, for against meat or veganism. So this model of non-ownership and of mass customization, this is incredibly important. We fight over who's going to get their way, who's going to run the show, who's going to fill the empty seat, and every bit of it's win-lose. When you set up a system based on mass customization, you're in a completely different paradigm of power. And overwhelmingly, Lawrence, I hope you're nodding your head in favor of what I'm talking about. It looks like it. Overwhelmingly, we're solving problems not through traditional left versus right politics or cooperative ownership versus private ownership. These go away as issues, and people, I'm going to give you one more example. Democracy is important, but running something by its design, better design principles will trump that. But if I told you there's already a way to vote on every issue from the local to the global level, we flash a debate in social media and we take a vote in 5 minutes, and we can vote on anything we want, going to war or peace conversion of war entities, staying at war, or doing what we did with the Marshall Plan when the US government led 28 nations to rebuild Europe and Japan in 3 to 4 years. We could rebuild Ukraine and Gaza in 3 to 4 months with modern technology. So we could vote in every community, whether the community wants another childcare center or whether it wants another coffee shop. So what is that technology? America's got talent, Britain's got talent, China's got talent, India's got talent. In other words, we flash a debate in social media. It can be on issues and not on entertainment, and we collect all the votes we want. And the reason the Visa example is important, even though it's 66 years old, is that industry associations can solve every one of these problems of being overbuilt and not distributing purchasing power. The banking industry did it for credit cards, created cooperation, but it can be done. We got 1 million competing restaurants, and that's why people are working longer and harder and wages are low. We got 1 million competing everything. It's a longer discussion, but I just think that, and I'd like to engage the cooperative ownership people in it, because we can promote plenty of cooperative ownership. We just don't need masses and masses of new entrepreneurial startups, which is what people are offering as economic solutions in the current election campaigns. That's really not a solution. It's what we've had all along.
Okay, Joel, thank you very much. Just got a few minutes left. Quick question from Lawrence about addressing how does the system not get corrupted?
Well, corruption comes from power, and corruption comes from poverty. And with these new models of power and this elimination of poverty, crime and corruption, we have a different shot at solving these problems. That's a really big and long question, but I believe, systems change, and we went from monarchy to democracy, unfortunately, with a massive civil war, and yet more change happens today peacefully through technological innovation. More change happens in a year than in decades in the past. And so solving many of the things that we're fighting over, left versus right, addressing them with win-win solutions, gives us, I say, a running start at solving social, economic, and environmental problems peacefully and cooperatively. Some people think these problems are based on evil human nature. I don't. I see people doing all kinds of extraordinary, loving, supportive, raise the whole of humanity up, spiritual, religious. There's so much goodwill on the planet, and you see examples of it all the time, that when we address these inequities in power and these inequities in wealth, I say we have a running shot at solving issues of crime and corruption. But that's anybody's guess how that'll look.
Okay, great. I'd like to ask Gordon a question here. Gordon, I think at the beginning, he talked about history and new technologies. And I saw where he mentioned that new technologies promote new forms of money, and then these changes usher in new eras. So do you think this is one of those moments where we might have a new era that can develop from, perfecting this kind of a ledger, a system of dual currency? Is it that big of a thing?
I don't see this as a new era. I see it kind of parallel to the Visa reward system and how that got going, as well as a parallel to the Civilian Conservation Corps and other systems that we had that brought things up for people impoverished. As you know, in my own book, Integral Society, I'm concerned with the central economic system. This dual currency model works alongside of that. It uses dollars, but we still have the problem with the banking system and the Federal Reserve and bank cabals and the Congress just printing money and inflation. This doesn't address that directly, but people are looking for other ways to hedge their bet against an economic collapse, and this kind of helps, and it also helps people who I think young people that need a little extra help, and they're willing to do some community service and get paid for it. I think that it's a win-win for everybody involved in the system.
Okay. Yeah, I see Joel answered a question in the chat about authoritarianism. We don't need that in the modern era. Is that yeah. This is voluntary and free market world we're creating. Just right.
I would like to see a banking system that operates off of a similar type of, off of a protocol, which is where the central currency, the dollar, is a refereed currency and not the players taking advantage of it and printing it for themselves, where the money goes to the banks as people have ventures and want to start businesses and want to build houses, and it doesn't go to just print off excess and send it off for wars and stuff. It would all have to be enter the system in a legal way.
Okay, good. Maybe ask this question here. It says, what benchmark is there that this paradigm shift is truly a responsible way of equality in business organization transactions and not politically motivated? Would you call this a paradigm shift, Joel?
I think it's absolutely a paradigm shift. The whole history of economics is a history of exchanging tokens. And people don't understand, because we've never seen it, that a ledger system has no exchange tokens. Look at loyalty rewards. They don't get issued, taken back, and then the airlines pays its employees or its vendors or gives charity with them. A ledger system, the accounting medium is issued, redeemed, and taken off the books. Do you know what that does? It's revolutionary. It keeps production and distribution in total balance. You don't have piles and piles of money piling up side by side with people not having the purchasing power to get goods and services. So, and again, I said this at the beginning, but now you have a little background to consider. Ledgers don't crash. Ledgers don't suffer inflation and recession. There's no such thing as no available ledger entries, and yet grocery stores want more customers. Lots of people need the food. There's no money, which is the only way that someone can get the purchasing power at the grocery store unless they're going to steal groceries or go to a food shelf. And so nothing could be more transformational than getting scarce tokens out of the center of supply and demand. Supply and demand are, it's a false notion that that's how economics works. Food's an abundant renewable resource. There's no unlimited wants and needs for food. The consequences of overeating are obesity, poor health, low self-esteem, and death. So supply and demand is not working. And the reason it's not working is because money as we know it, these tokens, these exchange tokens that are also at the heart of inflation, recession, and crashes, these exchange tokens aren't available. And so businesses get fewer customers and people get less goods and services. And everybody thinks this is the best we can do and says, oh, if you don't like it, you know, go live in Russia. You can't say that anymore. Russia's now a capitalist country. So the point is, we've done no outside the box thinking about money itself. We just try to regulate the way it doesn't work and just keep dealing with the same old problems. If you get the basics, massive available wealth that businesses want to sell, massive unmet needs that nobody wants and government can't solve and charity can't solve. What's missing is money or a new tool to match available wealth with unmet need. That's exactly the system we've built. But it turns out that it's a ledger system and not one more token system. So cryptocurrency, let me just say this one more time, and I can stay a little longer, but I don't know how long you want to stay on. Cryptocurrency is like a poker chip. You buy a bunch of it with cash, hoping to cash out with a bunch more. But it's also like a movie ticket. You buy a movie ticket with cash, but you don't go down to the ticket taker and say, do you accept my new currency? That would be ridiculous. A movie ticket is just something that you bought with cash. And it's a convenience because you don't want the movie ticket taker stuffing their pockets with all the cash. So the person with the till takes the cash and issues the movie ticket. So that's cryptocurrency. It's not new money. It's a cash-backed poker chip or it's a cash-backed movie ticket. And boy, the cryptocurrency people who've become billionaires off of the same scam that others have often become billionaires over don't like that analysis for sure.
All right, Joe. Well, thank you very much, both of you and Gordon, Dr. Anderson. We appreciate it. As I was thinking, just as a last word, Joel, what is on the near horizon for your project? You mentioned the Crookston program. Is that something that will be launched this year? And because a pilot project would probably be a very good, helpful thing.
Probably next year, unless we get a lot of funding and then we can launch immediately. This is, you know, it's a little, number one, I want to thank everybody who attended. I'd like to meet y'all personally. Reach out on LinkedIn or reach out to Joel at universalrewardsolutions.com. And then it's funny, this people have never been so busy in my experience. It used to be easy to pull in a group of people and get a pilot rolling. And this is, I've been swinging the bat since COVID on a restart, and it's just taken longer and been harder than I ever imagined it would have to be. But this thing can come into the world way faster than the sharing economy did 20 years ago. 2 years, and it had scaled to millions of jobs, billions of dollars of new wealth. So yeah, I'm very hopeful, and we are. And I got the perfect ending. So many of the faces out there look like they're in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. My peers, I'm 73. What scaled everything green, from the radical hippie food co-ops that invented bulk organic recycling, complementary and alternative herbal, buy local, carpooling, that all came out of the neighborhood food co-ops. They never scaled. They're a smaller percentage of the retail grocery industry today than they were when they invented all that stuff. What scaled it? It was a youth cultural phenomenon. What scaled it from the hippie food co-ops to the bulk organic and natural food aisles of the mainstream stores, or the entrepreneurial new concepts like Trader Joe's and Whole Foods? Well, what scaled it was a youth cultural phenomenon in the 70s. It was called Concerts for the Environment. It actually started in Minnesota, where I live, and it was Kenny Loggins, Dave Matthews Band, and U2. By the way, was this recorded, and can people get the recording or the
Yes.
printout? Because the
Yes.
printout lets you study it and ask really additional great questions. All right, so Kenny Loggins, Dave Matthews Band, and U2, Concerts for the Environment, which were charity concerts, suddenly in the 70s scaled to Live Aid, Farm Aid, Band-Aid, and Hands Across America. Millions and millions and millions of young people across the country coming out for the environment, which all started with Earth Day and Donella Meadows, a woman scientist. But science teaching doesn't shift paradigms necessarily. You got to get it adopted. And so the early adopters were youth. Well, imagine today if Taylor Swift or Beyonce or Rihanna threw a concert, and instead of raising charity, because we can see that charity doesn't solve it, they took community loyalty rewards for people to attend the concert. We would have millions of young people trying to figure out where to earn community loyalty rewards, and this thing would be scaling again literally overnight. That's my argument. This thing is ready to pop. We need funding. We need more executive help. We need more partners. Reach out and let's talk about how you can help. Alan and Gordon, I thank you again. It was a blast over the last couple of weeks sorting this stuff out together and winning Gordon over. That was the best summary of what works about our model that I'd ever seen from an outsider. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're always on Tuesday, and this is recorded and available on our website, archived files. So thank you, everybody.
And I apologize for talking so fast. Can't help it.
That's all right, Joel. You're an entrepreneur, visionary, and a social thinker, right? So, an
very
inventor.
very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.